Fearscape Media Network is your new home for everything weird and enlightening. Check out podcasts and YouTube shows covering content from discussions on horror films to the paranormal to meditation. Find out more at fearscapemedia.com.
Fearscape Media Network, exploring the unknown, one podcast at a time.
There are phenomena that exist all around us.
Kids playing above something
unknown flies over and disappears. People driving at night, seeing huge creatures cross the road. People waking up to find their cabinet doors ripped open in their kitchen.
Strange things
happen every day around the world and seemingly at the same time and area. But are these occurrences connected? This is what we are here to explore and are trying to understand.
Join us on our journey
to uncover what we call the Convergence Enigma. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Convergence Enigma with Josh and Stefan here on the UnX Network. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and dropping by just to visit me, your host, Stefan Gerhardt. But don't worry, folks, I am joined, as you will always see, by my co-host, who's not a ghost, but his name is Josh Rutledge. What is happening, sir?
Man, it's fantastic. Also, I like to point out that I'm your co-host, but I'm billed first in our little name there.
You are, but you know, they save the best for last. Plus, the caboose is the most fun.
The caboose is the most fun. You're right.
It is.
Anyways.
Yeah,
fantastic show for tonight.
We are very excited to be here on the UnX Network. Big shout out to Ray Hobbs. We love you, man. And for all you guys tuning in for the first time, this is the Convergence Enigma. Josh and I, we love to talk about all things paranormal, from cryptids to ghosts to UFOs to conspiracy to Hollow Earth to whatever is clever. Is your mother a lizard alien? Is she a reptilian? Right? That's what we want to know. And we want to know how it all comes together. How does all this Fortean nonsense come together and possibly be from or kind of the same thing? I don't know, but that's the enigma Josh and I are trying to figure out. We are so happy you guys are here to tag along and figure this out with us, man. That's what I'm talking about. So tonight, for our first episode here on the UnX Network, you can still check out all of our old episodes on theconvergenceenigma.com. We've been doing this a long time, but for tonight, we got a very special topic. We're going to be talking about, on record, the longest poltergeist to have happened on record. 12 years, Josh. 12 years long this happened.
Do they give out Guinness Book World Records for poltergeist activity? Because I feel like somebody should claim this.
They probably should, and I don't know. It's been a long time since it was Scholastic Book Day at school, and I got the Guinness Book of World Records. So I'm not sure, but we'll have to check that out. But we are going to be talking about the Battersea Poltergeist. This happened in a little Victorian house in Battersea, London. This thing is nuts. Like I said, 12 years was this a menace. But I guess what we're going to be asking is, was it a poltergeist or was it an alien in camouflage? That's what I want to know.
That's right.
That's what I want to know. But before we get to our topic, we're going to do as we usually do and get to a few segments of the night. And the first one, Josh, that we have here tonight is Psychic Word of the Week.
And now, the psychic word of the week.
Psychic Word of the Week, Josh, comes from the Encyclopedic Psychic Dictionary by June G. Bletzer, PhD. Rest in peace, honey buns. We miss you, and we never even knew you. What we usually do here is we have this big old dictionary, this Encyclopedic Psychic Dictionary from the 1980s that was given to me by a renowned psychic who passed away, not June G. Bletzer. And anyways, I love this book, and we flipped through it without looking and we just stop at a random point and we pick a word and we talk about it. So we let the gods speak for us. So tonight I landed, Josh, on page 566, and the phrase that I landed on was called skin writing. Okay. Now, I still take a pen and just draw on myself all the time. So
is that what this is?
I don't think that's what this is, nor is it.
Wouldn't that just be a tattoo at that point? I mean,
yeah. Well, mine would be an impermanent tattoo, or temporary if you're a layman. But here's what skin writing says. To produce a psychic message written in words or pictures on one's skin while in a trance state of consciousness, performed by an etheric world intelligence, stays on the skin for a few minutes or hours, just long enough for others to see and record the message, diminishes before the medium returns to the normal state of consciousness, occurs with no pain when written or disappearing, willed and desire controlled. Do not confuse this with a stigmata. Do not. It's also called dermography. So I got a feeling, this is like when you could scratch a name, like, and you would have the redness come up and it would spell something, like it would be similar to that, but no one actually scratching.
Well, so I was going to ask, if this is like the Roland Doe case where, he had all those words and things kind of show up on his chest. That's not really a stigmata, because the stigmata is like that, the cross with the circle.
Yeah, that's a Christian, getting the wounds of Christ. But yeah, I would say so, though. If I remember correctly, Roland Doe's injuries hurt. June suggests here that this particular thing doesn't hurt, but I feel like there's some wiggle room there.
Also, could be the difference between a willing participant versus somebody who's not really accepting the writing of the words on their body. So,
right. For example, when you get a tattoo, if you move around and jerk your all over, it's going to mess things up. It's going to hurt even more. So, anything like that, or getting a shot, right? So kids or some adults, are getting shots and they're screaming and crying, and it's like, it's worse than it needed to be. So maybe it's along those lines. So shut up, Roland Doe. It didn't hurt.
No, it probably did.
It probably did hurt. I wonder. So how a few weeks ago, back when we were still Fearscape Paranormal Podcast, we covered that the boy who is Roland Doe. They found out who he really was, the boy that inspired The Exorcist, and he was a NASA engineer and all that. I wonder if he had scars left over on his chest and stuff from that.
I mean, very possible, and I would say that most likely scars from that age would have just appeared as like dark spotches on the skin. But, he may have known that they were scars from that, time period in his life versus, I don't think they were scars that looked like words and letters, but. Yeah. I mean,
needless to say, the dude always wore a shirt when he went swimming.
Yeah.
Probably. So.
Probably.
Or they were like, you got scabies, bro, or whatever. I don't know. But anyways, Josh, that is our phrase for the week, is skin writing, not to be confused with a tattoo. So let's go ahead and get to our next segment before we get into our topic, the Battersea Poltergeist, which this week is going to be a UAP sighting of the week. All right, Josh, UFO sighting of the week. What do we got and where's it come from?
Yeah, so this was posted just a few days ago on the MUFON.com, only available to members. So, if you're not a member, check it out because it's a really cool database to look at. But it was actually an event that happened back in 1982 on November 1st in Wells, Nevada.
Ooh, so nice. This side of the state's where I'm at.
It says,
I was about 11 on a mule deer hunting trip outside Wells, Nevada with my dad, brother, and 3 family friends. We camped off the road next to a stream at the base of a mountain in a clearing surrounded by scattered trees. On the evening of the sighting, it was already pitch dark, and I was sitting on a log next to a campfire that we had built. There wasn't much air movement as the smoke from the fire slowly moved upward through the trees. My dad and brother were also sitting around the fire nearby to my left. The evening was quiet, cold, without a cloud in the sky, and you could hear sound of the gentle stream and bugs making noises as they flew by. Suddenly, I noticed my arms and torso were suddenly very bright, and the area around me was lit up bright. I looked at my brother and father to my left, who looked a little perplexed as we tried to figure out why I was illuminated. About 30 seconds passed as I shook my arms and stared at my chest and my thighs. I stood up. My dad and brother stood up, and we looked up at a bright beam of light that was shining down through the smoke and was focused on me, nobody else. We stood back from the fire and smoke to get a better look at what was shining the light on me. When we looked up, there was a massive silent aircraft hovering at our camp about 300 feet in the air. The craft itself was also estimated to be about 300 feet in length. The bright light that was coming from the front of the craft, and as we struggled to process what we were seeing, we were scared. The light followed me. After we started moving around, the light moved upward through the trees and up the mountain. The craft remained hovered over our camp for about another 60 seconds. The craft was well defined, made no noise, and had non-flashing red, orange, and white colored lights around the edges, distanced apart. As a child, I described it as shaped like an amoeba. The craft was cone-shaped with round vertices, no windows, black in color, and it blocked out the stars, allowing for me to identify the shape. My dad and father freaked out. They and we were terrified. They actually ran to get their hunting rifles from their truck and were going to fire shots at it. My eyes were fixated on the craft the whole time. During the commotion, the craft started to slowly move over the top of us, no noise, with the bright light in the front aimed up at the mountain. Started to move a little faster and accelerated from over the top of us in an instant and was gone over the top of the mountain at a speed I can't explain. The commotion in camp remained as we tried to process what it was we had seen. It was not a plane, a helicopter, or a blimp. It was massive, hovered, and was silent. The following day, we drove to Wells, Nevada, and my dad and other father met with the sheriff to file a report. We all were asked to draw a picture and explain the account. We were all taken individually into a room to give our accounts. It was reported to us by the sheriff that we all drew the same picture and gave the same account of events. Up to this point in my life, I have only told the story to close family and friends. It has remained clearly engraved in my mind since the event. It doesn't scare me anymore, but I felt that my account should be heard.
Oh, man, that reminds me a lot, and in a lot of ways, of the Travis Walton experience, like what the other guys experienced, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it really, I mean, it, and I don't mean to diminish this person's experience, but it does sound a lot like similar experiences that people report. And, you know, it's interesting that, you know, whenever someone has, you know, this kind of goes back to a contactee versus abductee, right? So this person is potentially a contactee. And then, you know, just seeing it, having the light interact, you know, kind of being singled out amongst the group that was on the ground. You know, it's a very personal experience.
It's intense, man. That's for sure. You know, and it's just interesting. The red, white, and orange lights, you know, very interesting, cutting up through the trees. I mean, it almost, before you described, you know, the shape and size of it, I would have thought it sounded like a will-o'-the-wisp or a fae. But the size of it, and then just this cone-shaped idea, you know, I'm like, immediately in my head was like, it's a diffuser flying through the air. But where did you find this at?
So this is on MUFON.
Wow, man, such good stuff on MUFON. Yeah, you guys, if you become a member at MUFON, you can check their database, which we love to do. So, but anyways, yeah, that's our UAP UFO sighting of the week, Josh. Thank you for that again. But let's go ahead and get into our topic this week, Josh, which is the Battersea Poltergeist. And let's see how weird this thing really is on more than one aspect of the paranormal.
Yeah, so like you said, this is coming to us, or this happened in Battersea, London, which is, if you think about the big river that kind of runs through, the middle of London.
The Thames.
The Thames. This is on the south side of that. Is where Battersea is located. And, it's just like you said, it's just a smaller, kind of semi-detached house is where people lived, in this. And it was the interesting here that the address is 63 Wycliffe, which, if you listen to us for a while, you'll see that I pick up on a lot of numbers, things. And 63, if you add them together, is 9, which is a significant number for some reason. So, but we have here the Hitchings family, which was a multi-generational family living underneath the same roof. We have the father, Wally, his wife, Kitty, their daughter, Shirley. Then we have a grandmother named Ethel, who is described as a fiery character known locally as Old Mother Hitchings. I bet you she was fun.
Oh, I love fiery English ladies, man. They are the best, dude.
Her adopted son, his name was John. And then, like I said, Shirley, and all of this really started in centers around Shirley. Shirley was, it says, she was about 15 years old. She was about to start art school and actually worked as a seamstress in a local township there. In late January 1956, Shirley discovered an ornate silver key on her pillowcase that didn't fit any lock in the house. Like
she just found this.
It says, I'm not sure if she was sleeping and woke to it or came home to find it there, but just an ornate silver key laying on her pillowcase. Now, I mean, I've had experiences where, my grandmother's house, that was a farmhouse that was built in the 1800s. It was haunted. And I've had times where I would come home from work and found a child's book placed on my pillow. And I was actually staying in the room of a child who died when he was 10 years old.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah.
Those. So, anytime that happened, like I just sat down and I read the book aloud. I'm thinking, this kid just wants me to read the book. So I did. But yeah, so I can relate to this experience of kind of coming home or waking up or whatever and finding this kind of out of place object.
Well, just the
bed.
Old ornate key reminds me of Joe Hill's show and comic book Lock and Key. That whole thing's about ornate keys and stuff. So, also, I was going to say real quick, Josh, that Battersea itself, I don't have the address of the house, but Battersea itself, like the center of the Battersea neighborhood, is about 2 miles southwest as the crow flies from Buckingham Palace on the other side of the river. So. Shows you how close this is. So this was definitely a well-to-do area.
Yeah,
at some point.
Well-to-do. Sorry,
hoity-toity.
For any of our English listeners, I apologize. So
sorry, John.
Yep. So that very same night, noises began, which were reminiscent of the Blitz. Now they're talking about the Blitzkrieg, right, from World War II.
The bombing.
With deafening bangs that were reverberating through the house, shaking the walls, floor, and furniture.
God, and this was what year?
1956.
So, man, we're not even 15 years.
Well, we're
around
really
15.
We're like 11 years probably since
the Blitz.
Since VE Day. So,
I just meant since the Blitz, like like people are still. There's a lot of PTSD happening. So,
for sure. It says that the sounds were so loud that the neighbors complained. Shirley, again, that's the daughter, later reflected that the sounds were coming from the roots of the house. The noises escalated and continued for weeks, with a new scratching sound within the furniture.
Here we go. I was waiting for another classic poltergeist thing because, things just being misplaced or put in places, and now the scratching. Ooh, that's the one I've heard a lot.
Well, the thing that gets me here is that it's the terminology used is within the furniture. So it's not like scratching of the furniture. It's like it's coming from within. I know, and I hate myself because my first thought is it's a poltergeist, though it's probably a rat. You know what I mean? It's like, y'all need a cat. Like that. That's what you need. But so then this tormented, the sleep deprived. They were already, this has been going on for weeks, and so they're already sleep deprived, and they added in the scratching sound.
Right.
Neither the police nor surveyors could find where the noises came from. And various photographers and reporters were left unsettled upon visiting the house. The theory that the noises were being caused by a supernatural presence, a poltergeist, therefore emerged, and the family decided to name the mysterious entity Donald.
Okay.
They just picked a name.
Popular name at the time, Donald Duck.
Right.
Come in.
Could have gone with Daffy, but
no. Donald gets angry. Back then, Daffy was still Daffy. Like,
right.
He was bouncing all over the place. He wasn't angry yet.
So multiple witnesses claimed to have seen bed sheets flying off beds, slippers walking around on their own, clocks floating through the air, pots and pans being thrown across rooms, and chairs moving around the house.
See, that's why I'm like, why are you still there? Like, I'm just telling you right now, Josh, I don't care how poor I am or well-to-do or whatever. If I see a clock just float across the room, because it doesn't feel like it's just like, the floor is a little off angle and it fell and it went a little like, slid across the floor like a foot or two or whatever. No, this is floating across the room. How time flies, right? It's like, I'm gone. I'm done. But people just stick around, and that's what I don't understand. But now I know the British are a lot more reserved, and chin up and all that,
But you also don't know, what you've got a multi-generational family living in a house. So, money is probably tight and all that kind of, you just don't know.
And what's that British quote, whatever, something, carry on. That is always.
You mean the thing that arose during Blitzkrieg? Keep calm and carry on. Yeah. So it's like that became a part of that culture. So I guess, but even the Enfield the Enfield haunting, they were like, no, we gonna stay. It's fine. It'll go away eventually. Right?
Go away.
So it seems though that Donald was actually fixated on Shirley. Again, she's the youngest child in the house at 15 years of age.
Okay, so another classic poltergeist move,
right?
To
and it's often theorized, right, that it's women or all teens going through puberty, which causes the poltergeist to appear or to manifest. But the noises actually followed her to work.
Oh no!
And would occur around her wherever she was. Most significantly, he says Shirley herself witnessed involuntary moving in her bed. Like she was laying in her bed and saw something moving the sheets in her bed.
Oh no!
And around the room, this was also seen by various family members and neighbors. At this point, her association with the poltergeist had caused her to lose her job and friends. and many believed her to be possessed by the devil.
Of course. Yeah, I was waiting for that to happen too. Oh, the sheets thing, that's some of my story. Some of the things that happened to me was seeing things moving around the sheets, or sheets being pulled down over me where I couldn't move, and things like that. And I could see them taut. So,
it says here that from around March 1956 onwards, the Hitchens family began to draw press attention. Photographers lingered outside the house. Newspapers reported that the poltergeist was romantically obsessed with Shirley. Many believed that the poltergeist was a figment of her imagination and that she was purposefully stirring up the story for attention. Because that's what every 15-year-old wants.
Yeah. I always, that one, dude, that one ticks me off more than, you know how I am. That people are doing it for attention or doing it for fame or all those things. And just the absolute hell that people go through, to me, is no. I can't buy that. Maybe later on it became about money once money crossed their palms. Maybe it was perpetuated and continued on. Sure, I could buy that. But all the stuff that happens before,
no. That's a pretty long. It's a long game with no reward. With no guarantee of a reward either. I mean, it's, you think about grifters and people like that. I mean, they've thought about how they're going to be rewarded. So, I just don't see that happening here.
No, me neither.
So eventually the Daily Mail got in touch, and Shirley was invited to the head office, where she was strip searched to ensure that she wasn't hiding anything. The paper published a sensational account on the story, which attracted widespread attention. An attempt was made by the BBC to contact Donald on primetime TV.
We definitely don't. That stuff does. I don't know. I don't know if it's because we have so many outlets now for entertainment that kind of stuff just doesn't happen like that on the mainstream, but I don't know.
Well, it's also, for me, the times that I have seen national or even local news take an interest in a quote unquote haunting and cover that on the news station as a part of like a segment in an attempt to catch something in the action. Mm-hmm. They're never expecting to catch anything. It's just a ploy.
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure.
So, I mean, I don't think the people who did that at the BBC like actually intended on actually catching anything. And in all actuality, what we don't really know is, did they catch something and decide not to air it?
Right. Well, and I mean, we have seen so many hoaxes now since the 50s, right? That now news just won't touch it unless it's Halloween.
Well, I mean, that's, we've talked about that with a number of our guests over the last 2 years about how the number of fakes that exists really makes us just question everything. I mean, that a lot of this stuff, unless it happens to you individually to the point where you just can't explain it away, that's the only time it really changed your mind.
Right.
So, in 1956, paranormal investigator Harold Chibet. I'm probably saying his last name. Is it
Chibet or just Chibet?
No, it's got in single quotes, Chib. He was known by Chib.
Oh, okay.
But his last name was Chibet, but he was known by Chib. And I'm probably saying the last name wrong because it's got a double T, so it could be like Chibet, but there's no accent.
Do you think he liked fish and chips?
I don't know. Possibly. Anyways, he was a tax inspector by day and a paranormal enthusiast by night. So that's Bruce Wayne's second cousin, I think.
Right.
So he was well known and connected, counting author Arthur Conan Doyle, psychic researcher Harry Price, and science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke as friends.
That's cool.
He probably did their taxes.
Get out of here. Goodbye, everybody.
But apparently this case became one of the biggest of his life, and his extensive records demonstrate that he authentically believed in the Battersea Poltergeist. He spent days and nights recording events at the house and eventually became a close family friend of the Hitchens. He did also write a book about the case, which was never published. That's unfortunate.
That is unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, even in researching this, we were hard pressed to find information.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, there's that BBC podcast that's out there, and
Right.
that's full of wonderful information. And I'm like, where'd y'all get y'all's information from? But they're in England,
They're there. They can.
they're there,
They can go talk to people,
and they're at the BBC, so they have all the old news
Right,
records
exactly.
too. But yeah,
yeah. Our friend Walter Bosley, who has this publishing company, or even Olaf Phillips, they should reach out to this guy or his survivorship family and see if they would be willing to publish his book.
that's a great idea.
So
And
if you all are
this
listening,
dude, if you've ever seen a picture of Chib, dude, he looks like if you were to merge Winston Churchill and Franklin D. Roosevelt together into one mega person, that's what Chib looks like. He looks like a combo of the two.
I mean, I'm honestly not surprised. I mean, I didn't find a picture of him in my research, but that fits the name, I think.
Yeah.
So
I found a picture of him, so I'll send it to you, Josh, just for you personally.
just for me.
Yeah.
Hit me with the pics. So
Yeah, I'm sending you pics, homie. Woo!
So as time went on, Donald's behavior became increasingly violent. Rooms were supposedly found trashed. Spontaneous fires would apparently break out. One which was so severe that it hospitalized Wally. Again, that's Shirley's dad. Interesting here. Writing symbols of crosses and fleur-de-lis began appearing on the walls.
Interesting combination, though technically they're kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Exorcisms were attempted,
Of course.
and the police would check up on the house from time to time. And somehow, Donald even circulated Christmas cards.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
Man, it was a different time in the 50s for ghosts. They were so polite,
Well, it's
besides
'cause
the starting fire stuff.
It's because stamps were a lot cheaper back then.
This is true. They were doing their part for the war effort, even though
Yeah.
it was after, because he probably died in the Blitz, whoever Donald was.
So we're getting there. Give me 37 seconds and I'll tell you who Donald was. It's said that the family learned to communicate with the poltergeist initially by using alphabet cards and through tapping a certain number of times to mean yes or no. And then in March 1956, through written correspondence addressed to Shirley, which said, "Shirley, I come." From March 1956, Donald left notes around the house ordering the family to do such things as dress Shirley in courtly clothes and contact the famous actor Jeremy Spencer.
Yeah, Jeremy Spencer. You know how I know who that is?
No?
Because I don't.
Okay.
You thought I had
you were
some
gonna
knowledge because I'm an actor.
surprise me. I thought you were going to surprise. I thought you all knew each other.
all the actors, yeah,
all
we
the
all
actors.
know. From
Yeah.
through time, we all
Yeah.
know each other.
Yep. There's like a Rolodex somewhere. In a handwritten letter dating in 1956. It seems like even though this happened for 12 years, all the information is from 1956. But Donald identified himself as Louis Charles, the short-lived Louis the 17th. He was born Louis Charles, Duke of Normandy, on the 27th of March, 1785, and he died June 8th, 1795.
Wait a minute. How did we find this out again?
He wrote a letter.
Oh, that's right.
To Shirley,
they were communicating
where he said this. So, of France, obviously, with he was rumored to have escaped captivity during the French Revolution.
I'm from France.
But later it was identified that he died a prisoner at about age 10. So Donald, or at this point we call him Louis, used a number of elaborate French phrases in his letter and claimed that he had drowned en route to exile in England. His story, however fascinating, was often changing and contradictory, though. So apparently Louis had a infatuation with actor Jeremy Spencer. I mean, I looked him up. He's a pretty handsome guy.
I do.
He kind of looks like a young Elvis.
I was actually gonna say a young Don Knotts. So,
when I first saw the picture, I thought of young Elvis.
I think it's just because of this one picture from a movie that he's in.
Okay.
But yeah, I do recognize him now that I see him. I'm like, yeah, I've seen him in a couple movies. He did some movies with Marilyn Monroe and Laurence Olivier and some things like that. He was always kind of like a side player.
So you do know him then?
Well, yeah, his dad knew my dad.
Yeah, his actor. What's the whole actor's creed, right? That's what something like that.
Yeah, we have a big club. It's like the Skulls, but for actors. So
but instead, you all stand around and hold Macbeth skulls instead.
Yeah, and it's from Hamlet, not Macbeth.
Right.
Whatever. And it's Horatio's skull.
Shakespearean people. See,
I knew Bill Shakespeare too.
Anyways, also if that actor skulls thing doesn't exist, somebody needs to start that. Like, that needs to be a thing.
Oh,
anyways,
I just can't tell you.
Oh, okay. So Louis demanded that Shirley meet Spencer, where he threatened he would cause Spencer harm. Extraordinarily, Spencer suffered a non-fatal car accident shortly after.
So now hold on. So Donald Louis here had an infatuation with the Hickson girl first, and then moved his love language over to Jeremy.
I think it's both. Well, I think it's both. He's if I interpret this to be correctly, I think he's somewhat attached somehow to Shirley, but then he has an infatuation with Jeremy. And in looking this kind of objectively, you've got a young, handsome actor,
like
and then you've got a 15-year-old girl. It's possible that someone could make the argument that she is infatuated with Jeremy Spencer and using Donald as an excuse.
I agree with. Now, let me ask you this, because we haven't discussed much more of the timeline, but is this still within the first year? So she's still 15 at this point?
Yeah,
or
so
is it unclear?
It still says over the course of 1956, so we haven't left 1956 yet.
Okay.
And honestly, the information that I was able to find on it, there's a pretty significant gap. Like, my next date that jumps from here is 1965. It says in 1965, Shirley married and left her parents' house, by which time Louis's presence was waning. In 1967, she left London altogether, and by 1968, it appeared that Donald had finally gone for good.
Okay.
There are many who propose scientific explanations. Scientific! For the strange goings. Some point to the noises coming from the house being located near an uneasy marshland. Is that like the London equivalent of swamp gas?
Oh, not swamp gas, but yeah.
Swamp land, I guess.
Yeah.
while others have suggested that acid in the soil could have led to madness.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, it was massively polluted at that time.
Right.
I mean,
plus, I mean, you just came through World War II, right?
Yeah.
Who knows what all's kind of left behind in the soil. And
I mean, they would have those, and now I'm getting my historical information from the show The Crown, but they would have those fogs that would last and sit, but it would collect all of like that pollution and everything like that, and it was poisoning people. It was literally, this was a real thing that happened in London at the time, was this fog that lasted for like a week, and people were getting poisoned because it was grabbing all the pollutants and everything in the air.
Well, and just not what I guess about 40 years prior to this happening, you also had World War I, which saw some of the worst use of chemical weapons,
I mean,
seen
and
in
you've
war.
got the Korean War, around this time.
Well, but that didn't take place in England.
I don't think World War I did either.
Yes, it did.
No, it didn't. You weren't there.
Okay, Stefan. Anyways, others point to Shirley being a starry-eyed but ultimately bored teenager who lived a rather sheltered life and may have manufactured Donald and drawn others in as a means of attracting attention to herself and making demands that would work to her advantage. Now, on this one, I would say that if you remember a few minutes ago, I said that, family, friends, and neighbors saw things moving around the room, saw house slippers walking down hallways by themselves. I mean, how would Shirley, a 15-year-old girl, have done all those things unless she was also, telekinetic or whatever? So,
yeah, I don't know, because that's where you got to start asking the questions, right? Was this a spirit? Was this just her? And if it was her, holy crap, how did she get these powers, right? So then we've got a psychically gifted person who has no control, no training, no wherewithal to handle this, which is a whole completely another psychic phenomenon, that here we are converging these things possibly together. Or did she attract a spirit with that power? Right?
Yeah. Was it feeding off of her or potentially even causing it to kind of lash out, if you will, to things around her? So it does say here that over the 12-year course of the haunting, some 3,000 to 4,000 written messages were delivered to the family from Donald, with a staggering 60 messages being left per day at the height of the case. Now, handwriting experts have analyzed the letters and concluded that they were almost certainly written by Shirley. Almost certainly. That's called an oxymoron, my friends. Kind of like military intelligence.
Don't call me Shirley.
So the actual house itself was demolished in the late 1960s and never replaced. So it's unclear as to, how profound the impacts of the events would have stayed around for anybody else being there. And really the case remains unsolved to this day. So I think I mentioned in the beginning that I have some convergences to speak of, if you will.
Sure. So, but I just want to wrap up real quick. So most of the action happened that first year, and then it was just,
so it was like
keeping it going.
It was like once they figured out how to converse, then they just basically became pen pals. So if you want to think of it almost like he was like, hey, I'm here, listen to me. And then they figured out how to listen to him, and then things kind of calmed down a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of odd that, fires were happening and all these things. And then, yeah. I got you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's, I could see, we have talked about before how spirits, act out sometimes, to get your attention because they want you to know that they're there.
Yeah.
And, this may have been a stubborn family that didn't really want to acknowledge necessarily that this person was there and needed something. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either, man.
And also, I mean, it's a 10-year-old, 10-year-old when they pass spirit. So, who knows what kind of baggage they're carrying around in the other realm. So, yeah. But we've talked about it when we did when we covered the infield haunting. I looked around and I found that not too far across in the same vicinity, there was a UFO sighting that occurred just a couple weeks prior to when the infield haunting began. So I went ahead and looked at UFO activity that happened around London in the time preceding the starting of the events, and then the time immediately following. And so I did find some stuff in Bexley Heath, London, which is in the London borough of Bexley, which is about an hour away by car. I mean, mileage, it doesn't look to be that far away, maybe 50 miles or something. But pretty much along the same kind of latitudinal line. And on the 17th of July, 1955, on King Harold's Way in Bexley Heath, a 30-foot wide saucer-shaped object was seen to hover a few feet above a street in broad daylight by Margaret Fry, age 13, and her doctor on a very hot, cloudless day. Car engines nearby to the object stalled. It was seen by around 30 people and made a humming noise and landed at the junction of Ashbourne Road and Whitfield Road. It hovered over Bendenwell Primary School for around 1 minute, and then it finally shot off into the sky.
Huh.
Interesting enough, another UFO had landed a few streets away at the same time, and a similar object had been seen in Bexley Heath in 1952, so that was 3 years prior. You may also remember that when we covered the Rendlesham Forest incident, I mentioned that was not the first incident that had happened in the area.
I do remember that, yeah.
That there was the Bentwaters case.
Right.
Well, the Bentwaters case happened in August 1956. So in the same year.
Wow.
And only a few months separation. And one could argue, because the poltergeist lasted for 12 years, it was still going on when this UFO case happened in Bentwaters. And since we know that most of the strong activity was also in 1956, you could argue that the strongest poltergeist activity was also during one of the largest UFO sightings in the area.
Yeah.
So I won't go too much into that one, other than to say that they scrambled some jets and they were able to track the UFOs and see them perform some series of maneuvers.
No big deal. Nothing. No big deal.
Yeah, nothing to see here. Move along.
This is happening at the same time that a potential poltergeist, which I am again a little more apt to believe the first year of things than a little further on. I mean, I think things if you're seeking attention, sometimes the attention comes from a real place, right? Because no one's believing you, but then you get that attention, so you keep it going on. But that first year, here we are, we've got the same UFO thing happening.
And then just 1 month later, in Cleethorpes, England, along the coast, in September 1956, a large spherical glass-like 80-foot diameter object was seen over the Cleethorpes coast for over an hour, and also seen on radar from RAF Manby. RAF planes approached the object and it flew off.
Wow.
So, I have theorized with other guests on the call and with you, and we've talked about it before that, if we accept the possibility that some of these craft may be interdimensional, as it's been suggested, that in the process of passing between the dimensional lines, between whatever the dimension they're coming from to our dimension, that may open some sort of a doorway or a window. John Keel often referred to them as windows where these things would happen. And while that window is open, other things can come through. We get Sasquatch sightings, we get poltergeist activity. And then once the UFO sightings kind of drop off a little bit, those windows close and that other related activity drops off a little bit. So it's very interesting to think about it that way.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, were there any Sasquatch sightings?
I looked, and you know what? I can't find other, like, there's not a lot of Sasquatch sightings in the UK.
Yeah,
and
there are some, but yeah, I've been hard pressed to find them as well.
And I wondered if it was because there's not as much like forested area there, or it's more kind of like rolling hills and things, or it's a much obviously geographically it's a much smaller area than the United States, so we just get more opportunity maybe for things to happen from a sheer landmass perspective. So.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, during 1955 was the famous Peter McNab Loch Ness Monster photograph, as well as the Dinsdale film in 1960. So, they didn't have Bigfoot, but they had Nessie up north.
I mean, they have cryptids, right? They have, they've got hellhounds and other things out there. So they have cryptids of sorts. They just don't have Sasquatch. Like, it
doesn't have to be Sasquatch, but yeah, I feel that.
But I mean, I also wonder if they have things that would be described as Sasquatch. It's just never been labeled Sasquatch, never been labeled Bigfoot or Sasquatch. It's called something else.
Yeah.
I don't know
like Boris Johnson would call Sasquatch.
But yeah, so very interesting indeed. And one of the things that I really want to do is sit down and plot some of these early sighting records. We talked about it with somebody else on the show not too long ago about how go back before there was Starlink, right? And really look at a lot of UFO sightings before Starlink, because so many things get confused with Starlink these days. Anytime I look on MUFON.com for a sighting report and I see, a line of 15 UFOs moved across the sky, I'm like, that's probably Starlink.
I know, I do it as well. And it's almost frustrating to hear the joy and excitement in people's videos of, oh my God, grab the kids.
Yeah.
There's just a fleet of UFOs. I'm like, at this point, we're years into Starlink and all of that. You should know.
I mean, I think though that UFOs are like sand people and they travel in single file to hide their numbers.
And then there's that theory that there were satellites in outer space long before we ever told anybody that there were satellites in outer space, that the government had put them up there, but they were so secretive no one knew about them, and that some of those earlier UFO sightings were just the satellites that were up there.
I mean, a light high in the sky, I would argue yes, but like the sighting when I just talked about, where a craft came and landed in the intersection of a street, nobody's confusing that with a satellite. So. Yeah,
when a blue police box just lands in the middle of the street and a guy with a big scarf comes out and shakes your hand and takes you with you, you can believe that one. It's just the doctor.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely.
Is he PhD or?
Well, it depends which carnation. He could be both. And I meant incarnation, not carnation, like the flower or the milk. But no,
right.
yeah, very, very interesting. I love how all of this stuff just happens at the same time. And I'm sure if we took an even bigger dive into just weird things happening in the 50s, not just in England, but the rest of the UK or the world, be interesting to see how the stars were aligned or what was happening with the tectonic plates or any of that stuff. That's the stuff I wish we had full-time jobs to do, Josh.
Oh, I know. Just to sit there and compile all that data. I want a gigantic map on a wall with push pins. Like, I'm missing that.
Oh yeah, I need some yarn.
Yep.
Spun around some, going to the other one, blue ones for ghosts, red ones, green one for alien. Like that's what I want,
So yeah.
I don't know. Very, very interesting. Again, if you want to take a deeper dive, I highly suggest the Battersea Poltergeist, the BBC podcast. It's on most streaming platforms, I believe. There's a lot of reenactments and dramatizations and stuff like that. It's excellent. I highly recommend it. If 35, 40 minutes wasn't enough for you, because trust me, there's a lot more that happened, especially if you have the records that BBC has.
Right.
It's very, very interesting. But yeah, Battersea Poltergeist. Thank you, Josh. So that's our show for tonight. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Convergence Enigma with Josh and Stefan here on the UNX Network, man, and the Fearscape Media Network. We are so pumped to just be a part of this and all of that. We are just thankful. And so I'm going to stand up on my soapbox and say thank you to you, Josh.
Thank you. No. Thank you to you. Thank you for being my friend.
Thank you for being my friend. Next week, we're going to be back here on the Convergence Enigma with Josh and Stefan. We've got Jason Gillespie or Gillespie. I'm not looking at a piece of paper at the moment.
It's like Guillaume, something like that.
I was way off. Sorry, Jason. I hope you're not listening.
Maybe he knew Louis the 17th. I don't know.
Maybe he was Louis the 17th.
Maybe he's Donald.
You don't even know. But it's going to be a fun show. He has a UFO related podcast that is just mind blowing. So we're going to be talking to him. Jason Guillemente, host of UAP Studies podcast. Make sure you guys tune in for that next week. We are here every Wednesday on the UNX Network at 8 p.m. Since you're already here, you probably don't need to know where to find us. But if you do need to know, because you want to check out the rest of the site, go to unxnetwork.com and check out all the cool stuff that they got going on. One of the things that I'm excited about, Josh, is the X Conference 2022 Into the Rabbit Hole, happening May 13th and 14th. It's going to be virtually on Zoom. You can register right on the website that I just said. Whitley Strieber is going to be speaking, Lee Spiegel, Lisa Martin, Wayne Lawrence, even Margie Kay is going to be, it's going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. So if you want to get tickets to the X Conference, you can get them now. I recommend checking that out because it's super rad and super cool. You don't want to miss that. A reminder again, check out all of our past podcasts from the Convergence Enigma with Josh and Stefan back to when we were Fearscape Paranormal Podcast. All of that is available on the convergenceenigma.com. You guys can check that out for links to all the stuff that we do and all the funsies. I need to put just goofy pictures of myself up there. You can follow Josh at Spoctology on all of his social media and me at the Astropope on all of my social media. You can check us out there. And I guess it's time to rock and roll, Josh.
Yep. Time to rock
and
steady.
Roll.
Steady.
And
rock steady.
Roll. So yeah, again, make sure you tune in. Once again, I'm going to repeat it again because that's how I roll. 8 p.m. Wednesday night, Eastern Standard Time on the UNX Network, the new mainstream. This is where it's happening. This is where it is. Other than that, we usually drop it as a podcast right after. So if you missed out on the radio, tune in. You can always check it out. All, like I said, the podcast is always there on the streaming networks or just the convergenceenigma.com. So, but all right, Josh, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. My name has been Stefan. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And just a reminder to you, please keep your eyes on the skies.
And this has been Josh. The truth is now.
And remember, folks, keep searching and keep questioning. Good night, everybody.
Good night.